Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our weekly Wednesday night Zoom class, which we like to share and inspire and learn Torah together. Tonight, we're going to give tzedakah, and we're doing this in merit of, we're sponsoring this, we're honoring this class in merit of the complete refuah shalema for Raphael Chaim Meir ben Tzimach. May he have a complete refuah shalema. He is also my cousin's son, so we're all family at the end of the day. We all care. And he should just have the miracle ready. Everyone's doing mitzvahs around the world. It's amazing. His mom has an Instagram page that is open now. She's posting the mitzvahs that people are doing. So if anyone would like to post and tag her at Chasya. And she put out a request today. Doesn't matter what background you are. It doesn't matter if you consider yourself religious or not, but she's begging everyone to please tomorrow, Thursday, to cover your hair. All the married women to cover their hair in merit of the complete refuah shalema of Raphael Chaim Meir ben Tzimach. And together we are going to make this miracle happen. She's just started covering her hair fully, and she's not asking people to do something that she's not doing herself. But she knows the struggle is real, and she's just begging everyone to do it, to bring in more holiness into the world. And how can we not do this for her when she's in so much pain? But we will celebrate the miracle together very, very soon, and hopefully Mashiach will come as well with that. So I'm going to give tzedakah for Raphael Chaim Meir ben Tzimach, and I'm going to just dedicate this class in merit of the complete refuah shalema of Razel Bas Hadas, my neighbor who is in a coma and needs a refuah shalema, who I love dearly, Devorah Bas Yafa Liba, and in merit of the complete refuah shalema of Miriam Bas Ina Pesi Yocheved, and also for all Klal Yisrael and Israel and all the Jewish people around the globe and in Israel, and Hashem should protect us all, always. I also dedicate this class weekly in honor of my dear grandmother, Rivka Dina Bas Yosef Yehuda. I hope you're proud. Tonight, I'm going to introduce to you a very special shlucha who shared with us before, Sarah Korn. She was raised Reform, joined a cult, and now is a Chabad shlucha. This is part 2. So I will post part 1 a little bit later. We're so happy to have you back and to share with us your wisdom and inspiration and story. So if you can please unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be back here. I can't believe how fast the time flew. And so for those of you who weren't at the last class, I guess you'll have to watch the recording. But I basically finished off, I believe, with the part of the story where my husband and I got married, right? We got to that part. And I think I mentioned, I think someone's not muted. So I think we got to the part of, I think I mentioned that I have a daughter who was born on Pesach Sheni, which is the idea of Nishkein for Fallen, that it's never too late. So now we're going to move on to part 2 of the story. So this is like right after my marriage and how we ended up becoming shluchim of the Rebbe. So we were living in Crown Heights at the time. And actually, I have to tell you a really funny story at the very beginning of my marriage. So my husband's parents live in Morristown, New Jersey. Actually, his mother lives in Morris Plain and his father lives in Morristown. And so we actually got off the train one time when we were coming to visit his parents at the Morris Plain station. And in those days, believe it or not, I'm going to age myself here. This was, I don't know, we just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. So this was like 25 years ago, a little less than that. We went to a payphone to call his mother to tell her that we arrived at the train station, and my husband put his tefillin on top of the phone booth. It had his Rabbeinu Tom's and his Rashi tefillin in it. Okay. So my mother-in-law picks us up, we go, and we went to go visit his aunt and uncle in Montclair. So it was like pretty far away. And as we're there, my husband's with his relatives. He's like, I have to put tefillin on with my uncle. And at that moment, he realizes that he left his tefillin on the top of the phone booth. So he like freaks out. He goes and he, gets in a car with like someone drove him back to the train station and they were gone. So, in those days also, I mean, even now buying tefillin is very expensive, but like we were newly married and our parents were already like helping us as much as they were going to help us. And they don't even understand really the value of tefillin. And he had a really good two pairs of tefillin. So it was like, he was very upset. But we had learned this idea from the Rebbe, trach good v'zayin good. If you think good, it will be good. So my husband got this whole story going where he was like, okay, he's like, I know what's going to happen. He's like, it's going to be Mashiach there. What's going to happen is a non-Jew is going to find them and they're going to see Hebrew letters on it and they're going to bring it to the Reform rabbi. And the Reform rabbi is going to then need to bring it to the Morristown yeshiva. And then they're going to get to put tefillin on with the Reform rabbi. And then they're going to find me because his name was in Hebrew on it. It said like Zaviona Korn. It didn't even there was no phone number or nothing inside, which lesson you should put your phone number inside your husband's phone. But anyway, the point is, and he kept saying the story over and over again. And so for 2 weeks, he was borrowing people's tefillin. Like in the morning, he was waking up early. He was running to shul to borrow his friend's tefillin before he got whatever it was. And I'm already starting to get to this point where I'm like, all right, I think it's wonderful, your whole story. And he kept saying to people, no, it's going to be a Mashiach thing. This non-Jew is going to find it and he's going to bring it to the Reform rabbi and they're going to bring it to the Morristown yeshiva. And he kept saying this story. And I'm like, this is lovely. And it would be amazing if that's what happened. But I just think you might need to I think we might need to face reality and just buy a new pair of tefillin, He was like, no. And he just kept saying the story. Anyway, he gets a call, 2.5 weeks after from his aunt, who lives in Morristown, who is part of the Frum community. And if you heard my story last time, it's Aunt Devorah, that was the person who I came to Shabbos for the first time. She calls him, she goes, Deviona, I have your tefillin. And he was like, you have it? And I couldn't believe it. I was standing there in the back and what? Really? What happened? You're never gonna believe it. This non-Jewish lady was in her son's car. And she noticed in the back that there was this bag that had Hebrew letters on it, and she didn't know what to do. So she brought it to the Reform rabbi. And the Reform rabbi called the Rabbinical College in Morristown, and he brought it there, and they put tefillin on with him. And then they called me to tell me that there was tefillin with the last name Korn on it, because she has the same last name as us, because she used to be married to my husband's uncle. So I had to start with this trach good v'zayin good story because it was such pure faith. He literally actually really believed that this was exactly what was going to happen. And it's exactly what happened. It was amazing. So this was at the very beginning of our marriage. And at that time, he was studying in Yeshiva University. It's interesting to tell the story in two parts because there's a lot of funny parts from the first story, but he thought all Judaism was the same. So when he got to Yeshiva University, he realized this is very different than my Morristown experiences. So a lot of the students in Yeshiva University, they take a year abroad. No, they'll go usually to Israel, So he took his year abroad in Brooklyn in Adar Torah. And that was the first year of our marriage. So so at the end of that year, as that year was coming to an end, we had already started doing some work in Manhattan with the bank halters because they were doing some shluchus work there. And my husband had only been in Yeshiva University for the year before that, plus the year in Hadar Torah. And he was in a 7-year tract to get his degree in psychology. And he had started doing the shluchus work. So he really wasn't sure what to do. So he kept writing letters to the Rebbe and putting it into the Igros Kodesh, and he really wasn't getting any responses. And the mashpiyim that he was asking, they were telling him, listen, usually like the Rebbe would say, if you started a degree, you should finish. But it didn't like totally feel right to him because it's not like he was like close to getting his PhD and thinking of dropping out. Like he'd only taken like the prerequisite classes that he needed to get it. Like he still had literally 6 more years of school, and he wasn't sure how committed he was, but he really thought like, I need to do this because like I promised my father, he's supporting us for this first, he promised to support us in exchange that my husband would, be able to earn a stable living, like going to school. My father-in-law still supporting us 25 years later, but some things that don't go exactly as we planned. I mean, he helps. But anyway, so he goes to this mashpia in 770 and he says to him, like, I'm not getting an answer from the Rebbe. I don't know what to do. It doesn't really make sense to me to continue going to school for all this many years just because the Rebbe would sometimes encourage people to finish their degrees. I'm so far away from getting my degree, but at the same time, I feel like my parents would really want me to go back to school, but I kind of want to go on shlichus, but I'm not sure what to do. But the way he was wording the letter was more like, Rebbe, can I have a bracha to go back to school? Because I think this is what's going to make my parents happy. He wasn't really like wording it in a way where he was actually asking for advice. So this mashpia says to him, listen, he said, I can help you get an answer, but you have to change the way that you're wording this question. So you have to decide if you're actually really ready to hear an answer or not. Because once you're actually ready to hear an answer, you'll get an answer, but you have to ask it the right way. So he says, why don't you call your wife and ask her if she's okay with like you changing the way you're writing this letter. So he calls me and is like, are you okay? I was like, sure, like I'm fine. So whatever the Rebbe says, we'll do. So he changes the letter. He says, Rebbe, I'm your chassid, and I want to do whatever Hashem wants from me. And if what Hashem wants from me is to go on shlichus, then I'm sure that it'll work out with my parents and we'll figure it out. But I want to do what's right. Should I go back to Yeshiva University and get my degree in psychology, or should I become a shliach? And so he opens up the Igros and he got a letter that says, now that you are doing a new avoda, an avoda chadasha, here's my answer to you. So basically, once he shifted, he got this amazing response. And the Rebbe said, you should not involve yourself in earning a parnasa. You should not involve yourself in earning a living. You should go out and influence Jews in the joy of fulfilling mitzvahs. So that was how we got our bracha to go on shluchas. And so we basically moved to Manhattan shortly after my oldest daughter, who's now just turned 24 on Pesach Sheni. So when she was 2 months old, we moved to Manhattan. So, in the early years of our shluchas, it was community shluchas in Manhattan. So my husband has all these memories of walking down the streets of Manhattan, trying to meet all the Jewish store owners. And he has a great story about this Israeli owner of an antique store where he came into the store and he was like, hello, are you Jewish? And this Israeli man starts screaming at him, get out of my store. What are you doing? I don't like Hasidic people. My poor husband, he's like young, like just inspired. Like, I'm just going to go meet the Jews. Anyway, my husband is also very ambitious and doesn't take no for an answer. So the next day he came back and the guy starts yelling at him again. And my husband's like, whoa, like, wait a second. You don't know me. Like, let's get to know each other. He ended up giving my husband, they ended up becoming very close. He ended up giving my husband a space in the back of his store where he ended up doing his work there. I ended up giving bas mitzvah lessons to his daughter. They've since made aliyah and we've lost touch with them, but those were the beginning years of our shluchas. That was like from 1999 until about 2002. We were doing community work with the bank cultures. But at that point in 2002, the shluchim who were at New York University, and they needed to move back to Crown Heights, or they were never actually fully living in Manhattan, actually, but for whatever reason, they weren't able to continue. And New York University needed shluchim, and we were already living right in that, like we were literally living in the apartment building where like a lot of the university kids go to school. It's called University Place was the street we were living on. So we were right in the heart of NYU campus. And my husband, with his very lively energy and youthful vibe, it just made sense that we would move on to campus shluchas, and the community works. The bank holders continued the community work, and we moved on to campus shluchas. So in the early days of our shluchas, we were a typical Chabad house. We got a lot of secular Jews. There's an amazing story of a boy who walked into our Pesach Seder, and he actually tried to sign up for the Hillel Pesach Seder, but they had run out of room. And so they were like, well, Chabad probably has room at their Seder. So they sent him to us, and he came to our Seder, and then he came the next night. And then he like started coming around a lot, but we had about 80 people at our Seder, and we got to know him a little bit. But when you're running a Seder, it's like very hectic. It's hard to really have like meaningful conversations with people or really get to know them. So, and it was also like we had a very tiny space that we were working out of. So I mean, I remember when we would have these 80 people Sidarim, and it was like a 900 square foot space. So if you could just imagine it, we had to get these extra narrow tables just so we could fit the chairs all the way around. And then we had this issue because you have to get up to wash your hands twice. So we would always try to come up with all these solutions, like how are we going to do the hand washing? We would have like garbage cans in the corners. And then one year we came up with an idea that we would walk around the tables with Nagelwasser buckets, like literally just to like do all the washing. So we were functioning out of a little space, and it was hard to like really like, you know, get to know him. But all of a sudden we started to see him. He was coming around to everything. So we were like, who are you? Like, you know, let's get to know each other a little bit. So he told my husband, he said, you said something at that Pesach Seder that changed my life. He said, you know, I grew up traditional. I grew up, you know, keeping some stuff, not everything. And I always wanted to observe my Judaism more, but I was always plagued with this sense that I'm a hypocrite if I do one thing and I'm not doing another thing. If I keep Shabbos, but I'm not fully keeping kosher, or, you know, or I keep some of Shabbos, but not all of it, I always felt like, what's the point? Why? Like, that's so hypocritical. And you said at the Seder, when we were about to eat the matzah, you said, even if this is the only mitzvah you do today, this is the mitzvah of the night. And every mitzvah that we do is completely precious to Hashem. And in that moment, a light bulb went off, and I realized I could eat kosher but not keep Shabbos. I could keep Shabbos sometimes, but if I'm not able to do it every time, like I can do some mitzvahs, and that's valuable to Hashem, even if I'm not doing everything. And then I just wanted to come more and more, because I realized like now I don't have to feel a hypocrite that I'm coming on Shabbos. He ended up becoming fully observant, full long beard. He's a professor at Boston University now. His name is Professor Abrams. He actually speaks in a lot of Chabad houses about, when we met him, he was getting his second PhD in some kind of fancy scientific word that I don't even know. And he actually won awards at his school. He won the Medcalf award for like the best professor, and they love him. And he's like fully Hasidic garb. He like invites his students over for Purim, for Shabbos dinners. Like they're like shluchim over there. I mean, they're not actually shluchim. There are shluchim in Boston, but yeah. So that's Binyamin's story. So we also had a girl. Her name was Leah, and her mother passed away when she was very young. And she told her when she was very little, don't forget that you're Jewish. And I think she maybe even left her a note or something, because she was ill and she passed away, but she knew she was going to pass away. So she wanted her daughter to explore her Judaism. Anyway, so this was many, many years later. she came to the Chabad house because she told us my mother wanted me to explore my Judaism. And after she passed away, my father really didn't raise me with any kind of connection with my Judaism. So I want to learn about what it means to be a Jew. This was, over 20 years ago. She's now married to a rabbi with a baby. So those early days when we've started to meet a lot of the Jews who didn't grow up with a Jewish education, we're pretty close with a lot of them to this day, because even though our Pesach Seder was very big, but our programs and our Shabbases were not so big, and we really were able to develop a lot of really intimate connections. But what happened is, little by little, the modern Orthodox kids who are from, the tri-state area, who all go to New York University and in these local schools, they started to get whiff of our Chabad house and the good food, because, it's like a double mitzvah to make delicious food so that the Jews want to come for Shabbos and eat your food. So I really put a lot of time and energy into my Shabbos food. So the modern Orthodox kids were like, there's great food at Chabad, we're going there. And they started piling in. And we would have literally in this tiny space 200 plus kids for Shabbos. And what happened was, as the modern Orthodox day school kids started to come, the secular kids started to dissipate. They stopped coming. And so we really had a dilemma, because we were like, well, what about all these secular Jews that we are having an impact on? Now, if you're wondering why they don't all mingle very well, it's kind of like going to the Knesset shluchas, or like going to an environment where everybody knows each other. They all went to the same camps. They all went to the same day schools. Even if you're from California and you're from New Jersey, if you're part of the modern Orthodox community, you know each other. So you walk into a room and everybody knows each other. And if you're just like some secular Jew looking for like some Shabbos warmth, you don't feel a warm feeling. You feel like a social vibe. So we lost that the connection with those kids, but we had these other modern Orthodox kids who were coming to us, and we saw that we were also really having an impact on them, because they would go away to Israel, for the year after high school, and then they would come back, and they were in the middle of Manhattan, in the middle of like the most, toxic environment, and they would start dating non-Jews. The boys would stop putting tefillin on. They had major crises in their faith. And they would meet with my husband and pour out their heart. We had one girl who, she was dating a non-Jew very seriously. And she grew up in a Orthodox home, modern Orthodox home. Her father learns Daf Yomi every morning. Her parents, Shomer Shabbos, like really good, warm Jewish home. She came from an amazing family, and we're getting phone calls from her mother, from her father, from her roommates. What do we do? She's literally dating a non-Jew. Like, there's pictures of them on social media together. She's, so they're begging my husband like to help her. And my husband didn't know her that well at this point. She was like part of like a lot of the students that were very involved in the Chabad were close with her, but she wasn't so involved. But he knew her. She's a friendly, very sweet girl. So he said to her, that's it. You're going to join the board. I want you on the board. She's like, what? I'm not joining the board. Our board is very powerful. They make a lot of programs. They're leaders. They get very involved. She was like, I'm not joining the board. Like, she was not in that headspace. He convinced her to join the board. She joined the board, and she struggled. She struggled for like a while, back and forth, on and off. She was really fighting her Yetzer Hara. She knew it was wrong, but she was very attached to this relationship. She eventually broke it off, and she attributes it to Chabad. She says, you guys literally saved me. Like, if it was not for my involvement in Chabad, I don't know that I would have had the strength to end this relationship. And so anyway, but then she struggled to find a shidduch for many years. This was a long time ago. We just went to her wedding 2 years ago. She ended up marrying like an Orthodox guy. And it was amazing, because when we were at the actual wedding, on the seats, there were like these contrasim. And my husband and I were like looking at it, and my husband's reading it, and it's in Hebrew, and as he's reading the introduction, it says, and my beautiful Kala, so-and-so, I mean, obviously I'm not going to say her name just to protect her privacy. And my husband goes, he's texting me from the men's side, because it was like a really frum wedding. He's like, she married someone who wrote a kuntras. Like what happened? Like, it was such a huge transformation. Like, it was amazing to see it come full circle. So that's that story. But Anyway, so we're in this like space and we're having like hundreds of kids for Shabbos. But the thing is, it was a basement, a tiny basement. And like my husband had oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I'll translate the words. You know what? I do that sometimes. I'm used to, so I teach and I teach a class every week to my modern Orthodox students, and they all know Hebrew. So I'm really used to just speaking in Hebrew, and I really need it. Thank you. So I will translate. So I don't know what I just said that I didn't translate, but is there something I need to repeat, or is everyone good right now?
Can you just translate contrast?
Oh, sorry. Contrast is it's a Torah book. So sometimes what people will do is when they'll learn a part of the Torah, they will then either put their own explanations, or they'll sort of take a couple of Torah ideas from different places and put it together into like a nice little book. So he was someone who was a Torah scholar, and so he was able to write this Torah book, which is a really big deal. It's amazing. So, okay, so moving on. So we are like in this tiny basement, and it was a lot. It was a lot to be in there. So like you could just imagine on Shabbos, I would make all the food in my house, and we would send it in a taxi over to the Chabad, like big like tubs of food. And then what happened is it was one like open space that was like, I don't know, 800 square feet. And then there was an office with our assistant who sat in there. She did all the bookkeeping, whatever. So what I would do is I would put a plastic cover over her computer. There was literally nowhere to put the food. So I would put a plastic cover over the computer, and then I would stack these humongous salad bowls up on top, one on top of the other there. And then on the side was this big like bucket, like big, that had all the trays of chicken and the side dishes. And then on top of the fridge would be all the desserts. And there was a buffet table. And what we would do is at the student board, I couldn't leave the kitchen because the place was packed like sardines. And I would send the food. There would be like a line of people, hot food coming through, and like people would like make way for the food to come through, and then they would put it on the buffet table. And we just were like, listen, it's Manhattan. Like, how in the world are we gonna get a Chabad house in Manhattan? Like, so what we needed was like a big open loft space. And in our neighborhood, there's a lot of townhouses and tiny, $12 million townhouses, which we didn't have anywhere near that kind of money. And it wasn't even what we really needed for our Chabad house. So we needed like two big loft spaces. So we weren't looking because A, we couldn't afford it, and B, there was nothing in our neighborhood like what we really needed. But my husband's office, so there's the secretary's office that I put the plastic on to put all the food that we would put through. And then there was the like small little event space that served as a shul and as an event space, all of that. The program director had her like desk in the middle of that room. And my husband had a little closet that we turned into an office, but it was actually a closet, like the kind of closet that you couldn't close the door if he was actually sitting in it. So he would sit there and do his work with the door like kind of open, and he had a big sign on top of his desk that said, "The salvation of Hashem comes in the blink of an eye." So anyway, so one day he was having a really hard time with the fundraising, and he was like, "I feel so alone. It's so hard to raise all this money, and we need a bigger building, and I have no idea how we're going to even get it. I feel alone." And I looked at him and I said, "You know what? You're not alone. Hashem and the Rebbe are with you. And it's going to work out. We're going to get the money we need, and we're going to get a building. It's going to work out." The next day, he gets a call from his mashpia, who was also involved with Chabad on campus, who tells him, "I just got a call from someone. They want to help you buy a building." It was in the heart of the recession. So it was a really good time to buy because prices were really good at that time. But my husband was like, "Great, okay, that's amazing." And it was amazing because we were just like for bringing the night before about how Hashem cares and the Rebbe's with us and everything's going to work out. And then literally the next day he's like, "Okay, it's time to buy a building." So, but he was like, townhouses are not going to work for us anyway. Anyway, so a few days later, he's walking down the street on Shabbos with one of our students, and they look up and they see two commercial loft spaces right around the corner from where we were living at the time, right in our makom, right in the place of where our Chabad house needed to be. Two like 4,000 square feet loft spaces. It was literally exactly what we needed. And not just that, it was a brand new building. So there's this idea in the Torah that the Beis Hamikdash, the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, that it's actually going to come down from heaven, that it's already built, and that it's going to come down from heaven. The Lubavitch Rebbe actually said that it actually is already built and ready to come down, that we're already in times where that's going to happen any day now, please God. And it's hard to imagine, but I can tell you that in a way, I feel like we experienced that because there was nothing in our neighborhood. And all of a sudden, like this new building went up and there were these 2 loft spaces, exactly what we needed. I feel like our temple came down from heaven. So anyway, we raised the money for the building. The donor who wants to help helped, and we had to raise a lot more money. And there were a lot of miracles along the way. And we got to the opening of our building, and we picked a date that made sense based on when our donors would be able to come. And we realized that we actually chose the date of when it's in the Torah portion of Truma. So in the Torah portion of Truma, it's speaking about all of the different elements in the temple in the desert that the Jews had to erect for God's presence to rest in. And one of the main components of this moving temple in the desert were the beams that were made that made up this temple. So there are a lot of different elements. And if you look in the Torah portion of Truma, it goes into all the different elements of this temple. Anyway, so our Chabad house, we told the designer that we really wanted it to be very, like we wanted it to have a modern feel, but we wanted it to have this feeling of Jewish warmth. So she did an amazing job of like really making it feel very Manhattan, but also feeling warm. And one of the things that she was very adamant that we needed to have was exposed beams, because it's very like stylish in our neighborhood to have that. But in order to have exposed beams, especially after what happened with 9/11, you had to get approved by the fire department. So you had to put these coats of white paint on it, and it was this fireproof paint. And then once you could get approved by the fire department, then you could paint it whatever color you wanted it to be. So the design was, the Chabad looked beautiful, but there were these ugly, bright white, like the ugliest color beams everywhere. And our opening was that night. Now, would it have been the worst thing in the world to have our opening with these ugly white beams everywhere? Would it have been a tragedy? No, but it just didn't look nice. And it was such a beautiful Chabad, and all these people were coming to celebrate it. And the day before our opening, which is in the Torah portion of Truma, if you open up to that day, and the way that the Torah portion is, it's divided by the 7 days of the week. Each day is a portion of that week's portion. So on that day of the week, which was a Wednesday, if you open up that day's portion and you look inside, it says you should make the beams for the temple in the desert out of acacia wood. That day we got approved for our beams to be painted. The next day was the actual day of the opening, and the paroches, which are like the covering for the ark that's in the shul, in the actual place of prayer, they weren't coming, and we also got these paroches in honor of one of the donor's mothers. So we really wanted them to be there, and we had them custom made and ordered a really long time ago, and for whatever reason they were delayed. And the day of that Thursday night, which our opening was that day, the parochas arrived. And if you look in the Torah portion of that day, it starts off with the parochas should be made out of this material. So for me, I was like, wow, like our temple actually came out of heaven and landed right on our block. And it was really an important message for me. Even if it wasn't an important message for me to hear that day, it was an important message for me even later, because once we got our building, and yes, by the way, you ever want to raise money, get a building. It's very, like, people like to give to edifices. They like to give to buildings. Operational budget, not as easy to raise for. Buildings, people really get into that. So, but what happened was our operational budget quadrupled after that. So it got hard, you know what I'm saying? Like, because now we didn't just have one tiny little, room to, multi-purpose room. We had a beautiful like purpose building. So when you first walk in, there's like a beautiful foyer. You go up the stairs, there's office spaces, there's a lounge, there's another office space, there's a library, there's a shul. You go upstairs, there's a humongous dining hall that was like 4 times the size of the one that we had before, a really big kitchen with 6 ovens and 5 sinks and a humongous walk-in fridge and freezer. I remember when we first got the Chabadas, I used to just walk around and just be like, oh my gosh, like I would just take it in. I was like, I can't, for years I would do that. I've become accustomed to it at this point, but because we did our opening in 2012, but I would say for at least 3 or 4 years, I would literally just walk around, just experiencing the miracle of it. And then in the back, my husband has a beautiful office with this Zalman Kleinman painting that he always wanted, which is, I mean, it's a copy of it. It's not an original. We didn't get carried away, but it's still like this beautiful painting of him davening lead on Shabbos afternoon. My husband always wanted that painting. So anyway, it's this beautiful space. And now we have tons of programming going on. We've got daily minyan, breakfast after minyan. We have 2 times a week Gemara class. We have snacks in the lounge all the time. We have my class. We have a lunch and learn. We have people just hanging out in the Chabadas all the time. We have chesed events and social events, and we have multiple things happening at once. We'll have an alumni dinner while we're having a regular dinner. So there's like all this stuff going on. And our budget got really high. And so at one point I was like, did we make a mistake? Like, were we crazy? Like, what were we thinking? Like when we're borrowing like hundreds of thousands of dollars just to stay open and figure out how to make it work. And Hashem always makes miracles, and somehow it always works out. And yes, we have debt, but yes, we're still here. And it just Hashem always helps. But it was like, but then I think back to that miracle that Hashem made, where Hashem was like, you are building a holy temple. Don't ever doubt that you did the right thing. Sometimes money gets hard. That's okay. But just know I gave you a very clear sign. So another thing is, if you remember at the beginning, I said that the original letter that my husband got about going out on shlichus was about influencing Jews and the joy of mitzvahs. Simcha shel mitzvah. That's how you say it in Hebrew. And if you remember my story from the last time I told it, one of the things the Rebbe told me is that one of my main things is serving God with joy. Does that mean it's easy for my husband and I? Of course not. It says in the Tanya, what mitzvah do you shine in? It's actually in the Gemara. There was a rabbi, I don't remember, it's quoted in the Tanya, and the Tanya is the main book of Chabad, Hasidic philosophy by the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe. And in there, he asks the question about this statement from the Gemara. There's a conversation, and one rabbi says to another or to a student, which mitzvah do you shine in? Which commandment is the one that makes you shine? So the Alter Rebbe asks the question, aren't all Jews obligated in all mitzvahs? Aren't we all obligated to do every mitzvah or whatever mitzvahs we're able to do? So the Alter Rebbe explains it's true, but every Jew has one mitzvah that's their mitzvah, that their soul shines through. That's like the gateway mitzvah for all their mitzvahs. It's the one they need to put energy into. So now what's the next question that comes up? How do you know which one is yours? How do you know what's your mitzvah? And so you might think it's the mitzvah that's the easiest for you. And I remember I love halacha. I love kashrus. I'm a kala teacher. At that point in my life, I wasn't teaching kalas, and I remember one time saying to my husband, I think kashrus is my mitzvah. I love keeping kosher. I love learning all the details of the laws. And he looks at me and he goes, Sarah, kosher is easy for you. And you know how you know which is your mitzvah? Not by the mitzvah that's easy for you. It's by the mitzvah that you're challenged in. It's by the mitzvah that your inner part of you that, it says every Jew has like two, Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Tov, the part of them that's inclined to do what's right and the part of them that's inclined to do what's wrong, because we need to have free choice. So the part of us that's going to try to hold us back from doing what's right because we have free choice is going to try to hold us back from the mitzvah that is our mitzvah. So the way that you could know which mitzvah is yours is by asking yourself, which mitzvah do I struggle with the most? And that gives you a clue as to which one is yours, which is disheartening. You're like, oh my gosh, the one that I struggle with, that's the one that I have to focus on. But yes, that's true. So my husband and I both are like very kind of serious. And my husband can be a little wild sometimes, but I'm saying we're both like, thoughtful, and we could get a little introspective, especially me. And so it could lead to some melancholy. And let's just say simcha is not my natural state. Like I'm not like always like, shucks, everything's gonna be fine. I'm like, oh, what did I do wrong? And I get myself very, very tripped up. So simcha is something that I have to actively work on. Anyway, one day, and so we talk about it a lot, and we bring about it a lot. And I my birthday's Rosh Chodesh Elul, so I really try to the first of the month, the Hebrew month of Elul, which is usually right before Rosh Hashanah, so a month before Rosh Hashanah. So I try to make a gathering, a farbrengen with my friends, and I always talk about simcha and tell stories about it. So one day, one of our students comes running into the building, and she says, "Rabbi Sarah, do you know what the numerical value of simcha is? Did you ever look it up?" And we were like, no, I never thought about it. She goes, it's 353. 353. That is the address of our Chabad house. Our Chabad house is 353 Bowery, which is the number. So in Hebrew, every letter has a numerical value. So there's not separate letters and numbers in Hebrew. So the numerical value, if you were to take the word simcha in Hebrew, actually equals 353, which is the address of our Chabad house. And my husband's original bracha from the Rebbe was to influence Jews in the joy of mitzvahs, and simcha shel mitzvah, and simcha means joy, and I have a special avoda with joy. So I have my signs. I know our Chabad house is intrinsically connected with our soul's mission in this world to bring Mashiach. And sometimes I just need to do a farbrengen like this one to remind myself of that. So let me just see, how much time do we have left? Because I don't want to talk, like 15 more minutes. It's an hour. Yeah. Okay, fine. So see, I wrote down some stories. Okay. So if you remember at the beginning, when I was talking about how when our Chabad house first opened, so when we were really catering to the Jews who lived, who went to school in our neighborhood, who did not grow up with a Jewish education. And so when we started working with the modern Orthodox community, which we realized we had a very important mission with them, the secular kids stopped coming. And my husband actually had said to me, one day we're going to open up a separate branch for our Chabad house to cater to these kids. So occasionally we would do things for them. So my husband would lead a lot of birthright trips. So I have another really amazing miracle story with the Rebbe's letters for that, because when I was first becoming religious, I was educated that to go to Israel is a very holy thing, and you only should go if you have a mission to really be there. Like you shouldn't just go flippantly. Like it's a holy place, so you have to have a reason to go. That's how I was educated about it. So I told my husband he was going to go lead a birthright trip. I'm like, you have to write to the Rebbe. You can't just like go to Israel. You have to know that it's your mission there. So he writes a letter to the Rebbe and he says, my wife's not going to let me go if I don't get a really clear answer. So can I please get a clear answer? And the Rebbe, he opened up to a book of letters, and there was a little letter in the middle of the page that said, Hatzlacha Rabba, and your shlichus in the Holy Land, and your main shlichus is to teach Torah HaChassidus, the Torah. So basically, you should have success in your mission to go to Israel, and your main mission is to spread the mystical teachings of the Torah to your students there. And it was like really clear on this. So my husband did like 20 birthright trips. So we did have like touch points with the secular kids at NYU, but it was like we didn't have a place to foster those relationships because they wouldn't come to the Chabad house. So in 2019, my daughter Liba, who is now just celebrated her 24th birthday, got married. And since I have a little bit of time, I'll tell you the really cute story of how she met her husband. So she finished her year abroad after high school. She actually went to a seminary, a Chabad seminary in Australia. She had an amazing, very inspiring year. And then she came home and she was working in a Chabad preschool and doing one-on-one learning with our students. And I started to make shidduch dates for her. I got shadchanim and I got very involved and, in getting her married, but I'm really not good with shidduchim. Okay. I'm just going to say that I have been on shluchas for 26 years. With marriageable age people in the heart of New York City, we have lots of numbers of people coming through our door. I've never made a shidduch in my life. Matchmaker. Yeah. Sorry. A shidduch is a matchmaker. Thank you, Chaya. So I wasn't doing a great job. Like I was just not setting her, like me and the matchmaker, we're not setting her up with people. It wasn't working out so well. Anyway, so I had just had my baby, who's now 4. And I had my baby 2 weeks before Passover, and Passover in Chabad it's a lot of preparations. It's a lot of work. And she's my oldest daughter, and she was in a very amazingly responsible place in her life. And I really needed her help, but she was working really hard in the Chabad house and working really hard in this nursery school. And she wanted to go to England to be with her friend that she met in seminary. So I was like, okay, this is one of the last opportunities she would have to do such a thing. Her friend had a Chabad house in Manchester. So I was like, okay, just go. You'll have an amazing time. I can't believe I'm letting my oldest daughter go away from me on Passover, but just go, enjoy, have a good time. She gets to the airport, and my daughter Liba has a very exuberant personality, and she goes running towards her friend in the airport. She sees her, they give a big hug. Little does she know that her cousin, who is also from England, came home for Pesach and was on the same plane in the airport. He's this, yeshiva student. And he's standing there and he sees this girl come running at him. And he thought she was running at him, but she was really running at her friend. So he just kind of stood in the background and he's like, who is this girl? Then later on, because this was her first cousin, they didn't speak at all, nothing. Then their bubby was having a birthday party during a Chalamoid Pesach. So Liba goes with her friends to their bubby's house. And this yeshiva boy sees this girl again in his house. And he's like, who's this girl? So they didn't talk. Then my daughter and her friends show up at her cousin's house to meet with her aunt and that's this boy's house. And so Liba, my daughter, is sitting with his mother and his sisters, and he's hiding in the kitchen. And it turns out that his parents were having a very hard time finding him a match because they were apparently, like me, not good at it and matching him with the wrong people. So they see that he's acting strange. And they go over to him and they say, Yisraelik, is she your type? Because no one they were setting him up with was his type. And he goes, maybe. So all of a sudden, my daughter's sitting there talking to the husband. She's talking to the mother and the sisters. And the husband starts walking in, asking her questions. Who are you? Where did you grow up? She was like, I'm great to talk about myself. I just thought they were really interested in me. I grew up on shlichus. This is who I am. So they're literally asking her all these questions. She was loving the attention. She leaves, comes back to New York, and I got a phone call from the parents. Are you interested in a shidduch? Because we met your daughter, and we feel like she's this angel who came out of Shemayim, and we want to set her up with our son. They're the shluchim in Liverpool, in England, the Kievans. That's how my daughter met her husband, because I let her, they were both in England for Pesach. And so Liba obviously been doing all of this wonderful one-on-one learning with our students. We thought for sure, but how do we know she was going to marry someone who wanted to run a Chabad house? But it turned out that was her husband's dream as well. He thought maybe they'd go to China. They ended up in Manhattan. And thank God they opened up a branch for those students who long ago we had to let go of because we needed to give attention to the community who seemed to need us most at that time. And now they got the Roar grant, and they moved to Manhattan a year ago, and they're already bursting out of the seams of their apartment. Their Shabbos started, they have 70 plus students coming to them every Shabbos, learning with them all week long. It's the most amazing thing. So Yeah, I'm so thankful that you brought me back, because when I tell my miracle story about how I came to Judaism, it kind of leaves it off, really, I feel, at the beginning of the story. It was just the moment, that was just the opening. And I see that since then, Hashem has been holding my hand the whole way. The Rebbe, for whatever reason, gave me the privilege to be his emissary, which is a huge privilege. And there's no doubt in my mind that I gain way more than I give. It is the most precious opportunity and the most amazing life. So I'll publicly say thank you to Hashem. And I hope that if my story inspired you in any way to either figure out what your main mitzvah is and strengthen it, or help another Jew to do a mitzvah, or to just be inspired to see Hashem more in your life, then I've done something good tonight. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Sarah. That was so beautiful. And I can't wait. Hopefully we'll have part 3, because you have so many amazing stories to share. Hashem should continue to bless you and guide you, and just, you should continue to give so you can get back as well. But these kids are so lucky, and your community so lucky, and the world so lucky that you're in it. This is a question that came from the audience. This is not coming from me. So I'm just going to, could you share the name and address of the Chabad or website? I would like to go to her class perhaps. And they also wanted to know, like, to give a donation. So if you can just share a little information, that would be nice.
Sure. So our website, which is completely outdated, we're very busy like helping the Jewish people. We're not great with our technology, is boweryjews.org. There's a donate button. Thank you. That's very sweet. And my cell phone number is on there. Like, I'm not hard to find. Chaya could also give it to you. And for the summer, because our students are away, my class actually isn't happening right now, but I would consider doing a class on Zoom over the summer. We're away in the summer.
And can you tell us a little bit about your programming during the year?
Yeah, so I mean, we for our modern Orthodox branch, we have daily minyan with breakfast. We have a lounge with snacks where the students study. The students always say we're in college CHB, Chabad House Bowery. That's the name of our class. But we're, and then like our university is like a side thing. But and then we have classes. We have 2 times a week. We have a Gemara class for the boys. I have a weekly class for the women. On Wednesday nights, we have a lunch and learn. Devorah Paltiel was teaching it last year. I think I might do it this year. We have one-on-one learning. My daughter Liba sometimes learns one-on-one with some of my students, because during the week, the secular kids don't need as much programming during the week. They're not like living in the Chabad house all day long. They come for Shabbos. They'll go to a social event occasionally, a Purim party. But my students are literally at the Chabad house all day long. Yeah, it's amazing.
Amazing. That's so beautiful. If you don't mind, in the chat box, just could you share your the website? That'd be awesome for those that ask. And then we have one more question. How does your past experience inform your shluchas?
Wait, how do I do the chat? I don't know how to. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry. So that's a great question. 1 second. There we go. I think that people feel like they can relate to us because we're very passionate about Yiddishkeit, about Judaism, but we also, we grew up and not observing anything. So I think that they feel that there's a common grounds, that we can relate to some of the things that they've experienced. Yeah, I definitely think it gets even, and especially for, by the way, the modern Orthodox kids, because they're like, in general, kids these days, I feel so old saying kids these days, but I am turning 46 in Elul, so I can see that now. Like, I'm an old lady already at this point. But like, even if they're growing up in a Jewish community, they're so exposed, and they want to feel that they can relate to you. They want to feel like you're not going to judge them for whatever they're struggling with, or experiences that they had. And I think that it creates a sense of common ground. They feel like they could tell me anything and I'm not going to judge them.
Wow, beautiful. Hashem should continue to bless you. Okay, we're going to conclude with a video, but I just want to share something real fast. Tonight, we had 56 ladies live on the class. Many people are waiting for the recording. There was so much going on tonight in everyone's communities. I just want to say in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, people used to come and give sacrifices to God, men, women, and children. And today we have Hakel, which turns out every 8 years. And we are in the year of Hakel. So this is a Hakel gathering. And a Hakel gathering is a very powerful gathering. So what I'm going to ask you today is that you left off such you shared with us so many amazing stories about your experiences being a Chabad leader and a leader in general, and so much to think about. But one thing that really talks to me tonight is about the mitzvahs, and we need mitzvahs in this world. We don't know which mitzvah is going to tip the scale. And there's a little baby, and he's 3 years old, and he drowned. It's my cousin's son, and he needs a miracle. So she's begging everyone to take on mitzvahs. No mitzvahs too small, no mitzvahs too big. It doesn't matter if you take it on once or twice or 3 times, but please, please be conscious of the mitzvahs that you're doing and have his name in mind. And tonight's video is very, very appropriate because it's going to talk about faith, and it's appropriate for all of us. And may we merit to just have the miracle and the miracle of dancing together with the coming of Mashiach and having this class live and meeting everyone from around the globe. And it's every 7 years, my apologies, every 7 years is a year of Hakel, okay? So we gather together every 7 years. Today, we are so blessed. We have the Zoom world where we can gather. We can gather in our homes. So I'm asking everyone to take something from this class and bring it into your families, into your homes, into your work life, and share. It's really important. I also want to just say a big thank you to our ambassadors for the class. An ambassador is someone that shares the class. You all can become one. Reach out to me. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please continue sharing and joining. We love having you. And I want to give a big thank you to Shady Jacobson for helping with this class, and Joelle for helping with the beautiful flyer. Thank you so much. And really, I want to say thank you, the biggest thank you to Hashem and the Rebbe for making this class really successful. And someone asked me how I come up with ideas, who gives them to me. And I said to her, the ideas come into my head, who I ask to speak. However, any thought that comes into our mind is not ours, and it's really from Hashem, and we can run with it. We can either keep it there or make something happen. Action is everything. So I choose to act on my thoughts, obviously only my good thoughts, because sometimes bad thoughts come into our mind, but that could be the evil inclination, not the Yetzer Hara. But so my blessing is that everyone should do the same. When you have a thought that comes into your mind, run with it. When a mitzvah comes your way, don't push it away. That means it's meant for you. And may we together celebrate this huge miracle that I know we will have. People are taking on so much. Please, there's going to be a video. And after last week, we committed to doing a 10-minute Farbrengen after, not recorded. Please stay on, get your favorite beverage, and we will make a blessing, and we will Farbring, and we'll open up the mic to all. So give me one moment while I share the video.
The world asks, what should you do when life gets you down? The Rebbe asks, if it's life, can it really get you down? First of a 2-part series on faith.
Wie gefindt leht Amuna und leht wie Teras Chaim, was das Chayro Bachaye Yem. Sagt on 2 Unionen, was lechere das Hafochim. se do der Inyan, as se darf sein an Midas Habitoche, wo dose mi seide, amon seine vetera seinu, und kime vuer in Halache, wenn geht zu den Inyan von Bitochen ist, meint mir das unpschädliche Pschute, as wird sein gut, beteva hanile ve hanigle. Kime vuer baruch in Shar Habitochen, necheves halavovis, und bekam Mekemes, und nechet verstandig, von Kame Mekemes in Schas, Reise von der Drusche Chassidus, wo sie letztes wegen Linien Habitochen, wie in Bejura Azea, von Mittelnereden, Bejura Azea, von Tzemach Zedek und Likute Tere, auf Bitre Bahawaii, Ade Yado, bekam Mekemes. Und wie Koomo der Dig, wo sie ist, soll sein, Beteva, Hanile, Hanigle. Wartke die Kach, am darf mispallel sein, und sagt mischtadel sein, als soll See sein, bis am sagt, ad leila mal die Sioisch, Odom Atzmei, wie wir sollen nicht beweisen, mit Meile oder mit Matun, Simoni, Vechulu, dafür sein Chosek, Bibitcheni, Bashem, als kann, alle deit Philosophy und Meister Hatevim, mehaper sein, als wir sein Adra, Bekiise, Nohei, Minachesher, noch mehr, wie sie gewähren früher. Und kommt über der Dig, wo sie ist, dass sie Dafke, Beteva, Nile, Vanigle. Bis wie das kommt, Reis in der Halache, Bepeir, wie der Rambam schreibt, in Hilches Tfila, Bitrilose, als mitzvahs essen in der Teire, aber schaße fällt etwas an Jiden, was für Azrochim sie soll nicht sein, dafür, und das hat eine Eise bedauert, mispallet nach la Kodesh Baruch Hu, sheim alle Zroche. Und das ist der Linie von mitzvahs Tfila, was Tfila ist ein Pirush Amilis, lechelere ist Pirush Amilis kipschutei, wo dort ne Rezach, wegen Birchas Hashonim und Refuas Achelim, mit Kol HaProtim, wie ist gerechnet in Tfilas HaMido, mit Protim und Protim. Wo Mishmak Elenu kommen doch Messiv sein, noch Protim und Protim, Nesef ab dem Nusach Hashove, lechol Nefesh. Biachad in Zeh sagt mir, aber Jachre wie Azach hat schön getroffen, ist demol darf sein, Meidele, beise Midische, wo Meidele, Kishem, schon bechuyev levorech, al hatev, jechit auf den Heper, und wie jeder Linie von Kiyim Mitzvah darf da sein, darf da sein, Beifen shel Simcha. Und wie mir sagt ab der Ruf, aber darf sagen, auf kol ma David Rachmon Letavovid und Gamzu Leteva. Aber das ist noch mehr, und beloschen Akedesh, die mit Duber Baruch kam Pomim, wie das ist bei Pashtus, echt verstandig von den Digmois, wo die Gmorre bringt, aber ne gehe zu kol ma David Rachmon Letavovid, die gewähren mehr nicht, was mit Menea gewähren a Hesig, wenn geht zu Gamzu Leteva von Nochem ist Gamzu, ist nicht nur mit Menei gewähren a Hesig, noch sogar gewähren von dem Opfer, was ist übergebieten geworden, von der Avonim Tevis und Margolis, ist das gewähren noch mehr wert, wie Avonim Tevis und Margolis, kemevuir in dem Sipur bepascht. Wo der Bier, was ist, als Yid ist allemal dafür leben mit Teras Chayim, wo der Simen von Leben ist, Yid, was beschaß, steht bemerzt, und bechayus, und besimcho, und wie bald, als der Kohl der Rege von Leben, afal pi, was sie doch in in Kamo Protim, so habe derselbe Ingen hat Teichen Apnimis, aber das ist der Ingen von Chayim, ich bin eben bechol, mein mit du Matzev, darf leben mit den ganzen Stüren. Wenn ist a vieles hat getroffen a Sach, wo sein Tfilot nicht geholfen, ist a sichere Sache, das darf nicht mindern, memai sein, in sein Chayis, wie bald das nicht stabil geworden, soll dienen Likim Chai, durch memale sein der Heroes von Teras Chai, Bechai auf Yemim, ist davon verstandig, als darf beim sein der Tomid, da wird es Hawaii besimcha auf Tuv Levo, Likibule besimcha. אף על פי וסר בד בשעס מייסה, בנגיע להיבו לאוסיד, אז הוא זין בטבע הנירי והניגלה דווקא.
Wow. So how appropriate was this? I thought I'm sharing this video for a whole nother reason, but it just ties into everything that Sarah said about the mitzvah that is hardest for her is your mitzvah, and that's serving Hashem with joy. And it's pretty amazing. So, and I'm sure that talks to many of us. We are in Gullus, unfortunately, and there's hardships, and every single person, not one person doesn't have something in their life that's hard. And we should do it with joy, and we should only have joyful occasions to celebrate together. It's a year of Hakel. We should have Mashiach very, very soon. Just letting everyone know, I made a bracha earlier, but I'm going to say l'chaim. Everyone could raise their cups and remember the blessings at the end. So whatever it is, someone came to the Lubavitcher Rebbe and asked if they can get the same effect of the blessing if it's water. Tonight it's water, not alcohol. Tonight, and he said yes, but the blessings at the bottom. So drink up, everyone. For Rafael, Chaimer, Ben Tzima, Chasha, and all Klal Yisrael. Wow. And don't forget to make a blessing after. I'm gonna stop the recording now. Thank you everyone for joining. We're gonna continue with a Farbrengen, a Hasidic gathering.